اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وفقا في الدين يا رب العالمين. وفقنا للعمل بما يرضيك عنا وإلى غيرك لا تكلنا. افتح أقفال قلوبنا بذكرك وألهمنا شكرك واجعلنا من أهل معرفتك ولا
Did it go, Sheikh?
All one touch, but the support passes back.
We covered part of it. We still have plenty to cover, inshallah ta'ala. So Zuhd, mainly it's about renouncing the dunya. It's focusing about the akhirah more. And we'll see, Ghazali, he has his own take on the definition of zuhud, on the levels of zuhud, on the application of zuhud, minimum requirements, and so on. So last time we have talked about the meaning of zuhud, the reality of zuhud, foundation, and its fruits. Ghazali mentioned that it's about the knowledge, and based on that knowledge, you can practice zuhud. Otherwise, you cannot do zuhud without knowledge. And Al-Ghazali says, rahimahullah ta'ala, so the fruits of this knowledge give you direction, and accordingly you should have the necessary provisions, because we are mainly talking about zuhud in dunya. Zuhud in dunya is renouncing the dunya. So you cannot just live on a different planet. You live on planet Earth and you deal with the dunya. So Ghazali mentioned here that it's about seeking the necessary provisions. Number one, shelter. Number two, clothing. Number three, food. Number four, furniture. So we touched upon this last time very quickly, and I told you I will not go through the details because Ghazali's details are not very relevant to our time. So for instance, he mentioned regarding the food. So you have the necessary food. You don't go to the luxury food. So for instance, he says, you don't store food for more than what you need for your day. Or for instance, for a month, depends where you are. Or what suffices you in your journey. So you are going on a journey 10 days, 5 days, depends. And then he started going to how much. For instance, using their own terms at that time, as we have, for instance, here in today's terms, like kilograms, like they have a different type of measurements, like mud and rattle and the like of it. So he is even telling you how much. But again, this is irrelevant to us. And then talking about what type of food you can eat, not the top and not the medium. You just, you eat the medium, not the very top, not the very low. You eat the medium. And at that time was the barley bread. So bread which being made from barley is the medium. The top quality was white wheat, and this was a luxury. And again, what you eat, what not to eat, what to dress, the minimum what you cover your aura with it, what you protect yourself from the heat of the sunlight and the cold of winter and the rain and the like of it. This is the minimum. And he's saying how many dresses you have. So you have only one dress you cover yourself with. If you had to wash it, you have no other dress. Oh my God. Come and look at our dresses, how many dresses we have. Look at the piles of dresses which we have. Some people even have a walk-in wardrobe. So look at the wardrobes which we have. Some people have hundreds. So he's saying this is not zuhud. You have this, then you are not a person of zuhud. And he quoted Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, showing the companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum the dress of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, very humble, very cheap clothes he used to wear, alayhi salatu wasalam. Having said this, he used to have as well very good quality clothes he used to put on when he receives the delegations and he goes to Eid and Jumu'ah. It was top quality, alayhi salatu wasalam. So just to balance this and see the prophetic application from different angles, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he talks about the dress of Umar. That Umar, he used to have in his dress many patches. Even he said 12 patches in his dress. And Ali, he used to have as well very cheap clothes and so on and so forth. Again, it's all with the context. You need to have the right context. So some people might have the dress with patches and it's a kind of fashion, or it's kind of showing off that he is a person of zuhud and he's not into the dunya. And this is just to draw the attention. And this is punishable, to be honest. And regarding the shelter, he's saying that it's enough for you to be satisfied with a corner in a mosque or in a place which they call at that time zawiya. Zawiya, it's a special term being used by Sufis. And these zawiyas or tikiyas, might sometimes they call it, it used to be open 24/7 all year round for any person who's needy, or he has no shelter, or he is homeless. They can go and take shelter in that zawiya. Zawiya literally means the corner. So they go on to that zawiya, but not necessarily to be a corner, but this is the terminology which being used. We still have till now this kind of zawaya, which is plural of zawiya, in Morocco, in Syria, and even in Lebanon, where I come from, and across the Muslim world, this practice was everywhere. So he says, if you have a small space there just to put your head on, that's enough for you. You don't need more than that. And he gave the example of the people of Sufa. Ahlul Sufa used to be in the back of the mosque of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who has no shelter, no food, no job, no nothing, no money, no wealth. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam dedicated for them a special place towards the end of the mosque called the Sufa place, and it has a bit of it's higher than the rest of the mosque for the people to see them. So this is why it's being called Sufa. So whoever has something extra, he will bring to them food or clothes or whatever. Then he's saying that you don't, even if you have your own place renting, you don't trouble yourself with decoration, this, that, and the other. You just go to the bare minimum and focus on something else rather than the dunya. And he mentioned a narration in the Sunnah that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed by some of his companions. They were plastering a wall for their property, and he looked at them alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says, the matter is quicker than that. The matter is quicker than that. So it means that the hour can happen anytime, and you are just plastering the wall and wasting your time on that. So something along these lines. So the Prophet ﷺ is drawing the attention of the akhirah more than the dunya. And look at his house, his rooms actually, al-hujurat, which we call it. Hujra, which is a room. So he used to have for every one of his wives a room, and the plural of room, hujra, hujurat. So he used to have the hujurat is probably 2x2 or 2x3 maximum. That's it. No decoration, no nothing. Even you can see this very description in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even some people in Medina made like a model of based on the description in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can search it on YouTube. You can find it's almost exact description and shape of his room alayhi salatu wasalam, and his bed and his mattress and his pillow and what used to be in his room alayhi salatu wasalam as furniture. He will be surprised. Very basics, everything basic, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So again, it's focusing about what really matters. It's not the luxury. But don't misunderstand this concept of zuhd. It doesn't mean that you don't care about good appearance. You don't care about good shelter. You care, but this is not your priority. It's not the aim. It's not the main focus. You are so focused on that, and then you neglect anything else. No. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was satisfied with bare minimum. Alayhi salatu wassalam. And again, he talks about what to have as furniture, the minimum, like a cup to drink with, water, stuff, utensils used for cooking, used for eating, and so on. So again, talking about no luxury, because the luxury is ahead of you. You will have plenty, inshallah, in the akhirah. Probably the main question here, is it haram to have luxury in the dunya? If it's in halal, you earn it from halal, you did put it in halal, it's not haram, but do not make this your main focus. Do not make this your target, i.e. you work extra hours to have luxury for you and your family, and then, okay, what about the akhirah? Do you work extra hours for the akhirah? Do you work extra hours for you and your family in the akhirah? This is what the story is about here. It's not about, yeah, I have a good car, I have a good house. Is it haram? It's not about this. It's about on the expense of what? If it's on the expense of the akhirah, don't do that. If you can balance, then alhamdulillah, that's good. But again, don't make the dunya your target, your full occupation. Don't. And this is why in the hadith, Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Ta'isa abdul dinari, Ta'isa abdul dirham. Miserable is the slave of dinar and dirham, i.e. the money. He is miserable. And we see this, we are sort of the slaves of our jobs. It's a new slavery. If 9 to 5, even some people, it's beyond 9 to 5, it's 9 to 9 sometimes. And if he's a fund manager or a banker or something like that, like venture capital, like all these kind of money-making machines and stuff, they even work 11 hours a day, 12 hours a day. So we are enslaved to our desks and our screens and our jobs. Okay, do you really want to do this? Is it really your life? Or you can have what is reasonable and sufficient for you and your family, and invest in the akhirah. It's a big question, depends on you, where you are, depends on your situation, depends on your needs and what have you. But it's something to look at. So look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the best example, of course. His life was basic, alayhi salatu wasallam. If he wanted, he would have a mountain of Uhud to be gold, and he will spend it and live luxury. He's been offered something like this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he refused. He doesn't want to do this. And then he mentioned the levels of zuhud. He said, number one, he renounced the dunya, but deep down he's still connected to the dunya. And he is trying and striving to get rid of this attachment and connection. And Ghazali says this is mutazahid and not zahid. Like somebody, easily can practice sabr, and somebody he has no sabr whatsoever, but he is practicing sabr. He is training himself to be patient. This is the difference between the two. Somebody is zahid, is not connected to the, yes, he's not struggling even, he's not connected, he renounced the dunya. Somebody, he is trying to renounce the dunya, so he's a trainee zahid, a trainee zahid if you want. Yes, so he's a trainee in zuhud. He's not yet a zahid, he's still a novice trying to be a zahid. This is what Ghazali is mentioning, rahimahullah. And then he says, it's not something wrong, it's the beginning of something is to try, to strive towards it. So bidayat zuhd tazahud, he says, rahimahullah. So the beginning of zuhud is to train yourself to be a person of zuhud. And then the second level, of course, more likely we are in the first level. We are trying not to be connected to the dunya, not to make the dunya dominant and controlling our decisions and our vision and so on and so forth. Definitely, we are not zahid people or zuhad, which is plural of zahid, but trying. Then he says level 2. He renounced the dunya completely from his heart. Based on his knowledge that the possibility of combining between the luxury of the dunya and the luxury of the akhirah is impossible. Or, yes, it's not possible. So if you've been given this as a choice, you have to choose one of between these two, the luxury of dunya or luxury of akhirah. You cannot combine the two. So which one will you choose? So definitely it should be the akhirah. So this is about this level. So he says when he makes this comparison in his mind, that it's either the dunya or the akhirah, which one should I choose? Then he feels that, yes, I don't want the dunya, I want the akhirah. And he says it's like somebody who's paying money to buy a jewel. Yes, you are spending the money, but you are getting a jewel at the end of the day. So you are sacrificing the dunya, but you are getting the akhirah. This is how he put it, rahimahullah ta'ala. So in this level, he's not connected, not attached to the dunya. He's been, if you want, disgusted by the dunya. He doesn't like the dunya anymore. He's not after the dunya. And we've seen this example in the story of Haritha, the companion, who came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, "Azafat nafsi an ad-dunya." I feel I'm not connected anymore to the dunya. I'm renouncing the dunya. I don't like the dunya anymore. And I can see as if the people of Jannah in Jannah visiting one another. I can see, I can hear the screams of the people of Jahannam and so on. So this level is not in any shape or form attached to the dunya. The third level, he says, is neither in level 1 or level 2. He's in a different level. He doesn't, he's not connected to the dunya. He's not attached to the dunya. And he doesn't care about the dunya. And at the same time, he's not disgusted by the dunya. So he's like neutral. Yes, he doesn't hate the dunya. He doesn't love the dunya, so he's neutral. So level 1, you still love the dunya, but you are striving towards letting go of the dunya. Level 2, you hate the dunya and you are connected to the akhirah. Level 3, you don't hate, you don't like the dunya. Yes? Both are the same. If you were to get the dunya or to lose the dunya, you don't care. And he says, the money to him is like the water. So when you need it, you drink. That's it. Now you are not thinking all day long or after the dunya for that. That's it. Again, these are, I know some of you are saying, yeah, it's like fairy tales, isn't it? Because we've never been there. We don't know what does it mean. What he's talking about is like a different story for all of us. But he's taking us through the inner reality of Zuhd, that people on that level are different. People of Zuhd are different. So some of them will be in this level, some of them in this level, and some of them in this level. Not all of them are on the same level, which is very true in everything, actually. You don't have one level for everybody. And Ghazali says the third level is the level of Kamal, or perfect level. So he's saying, because somebody who hates something it's similar to somebody who loves something. So both are wrong. So this person in the third level, he doesn't hate, he doesn't love. So he's not wasting his time fighting and not wasting his time running after it. It's neutral. And then he says, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha received 100,000 dirham. She took it. She didn't say, this is dunya, throw it away, I don't want it. She took it and she distributed it on the same day. And her servant said, you didn't leave anything for us. She said, I forgot. If you were to remind me, I would have left something for us to buy some food. So he's giving this example as, she's not attached to the dunya. She's not, she doesn't hate or love the dunya. And then he says, and this is the real wealth. This is the real wealth. But this is top level. It takes a lot for somebody to get there. And then Ghazali says that the perfect level of Zuhd, you do not consider Zuhd in the first place. And you don't see this as a station. Because when you leave the dunya and you consider that you have left the dunya, then you are giving attention to the dunya. And this is wrong. because the dunya for the people of insight is nothing. So you don't give it attention in the first place. And comparing the dunya to the akhirah is nothing, like a drop in the ocean. Then Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala says, the zuhud regarding the motivation behind it, as well, it's divided into 3 levels. You might practice zuhud, number 1, because you fear the hellfire. And this zuhud, he called it zuhdul khaifin, the zuhud of the fearful people, people of fear. They do not want to be punished for anything related to the dunya. They fear the hellfire. So this is why they practice zuhud. They are afraid that if they were to be engaged in the dunya, this might lead them to hellfire. And they are afraid of the hellfire, then they practice zuhud, to be on the safe side. I don't want this dunya. I don't want to get into this. I don't want to be in trouble. And that's it. So the best way to fight this is just to refrain from this in the first place. And you might have this feeling sometimes when you get an offer, a business offer or something, and then it's too good to be true, but there's a catch, something, conditions or something in it. When you read the terms and conditions, you find there's something suspicious, there is something doubtful. So what to do? Some people, believe me, some people will say, you know what, I'll do istikhara, I'll do my consultation, ask people of experience and so on, but deep down I feel not comfortable with this. There's something fishy about this. And some people will say, yeah, it might work, but it might not work. It might lead me to something which is not good. And no, I don't feel comfortable with this. They will just reject the offer. And this is based on, of course, after you do your homework and your istikhara. This is based on zuhud, that I don't want to be in that position which might lead to punishment in the akhirah because of doubtful matters and stuff which is not clear and so on and so forth. So the fear of the akhirah, fear of the hellfire, makes you refrain from doing stuff which might lead to something regretful. So this is number 1 level, the motivation behind zuhud in level 1. And then he says on level 2, the motivation is higher. What is it? It's the desire in Jannah. So you want Jannah and you desire Jannah. You are longing to Jannah. And who doesn't long to Jannah actually? And he says this is Zuhud al-Rajin. Zuhud by people of hope. They hope to get to Jannah. Of course, it doesn't mean hope with no action. You have hope and you translate this hope into action. So then Ghazali says, وَالْعِبَادَةُ عَلَى الرَّجَاءِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْهَا عَلَى الْخَوْفِ. So to worship with hope, it's better than to worship with fear. Because hope dictates love. You see? And love brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he moved on to the third level. The third level, which is the highest level, Ghazali says, rahimahullah, that the motivation behind practicing zuhud is not fear of the hellfire, is not the desire in Jannah. Okay, we are listening. What is it then? He said, it's about leaving everything behind except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to give any attention to anything but to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you are fully focused on what pleases Allah Azza wa Jal. So in other words, your motivation behind zuhud is Allah's pleasure. It's not because you fear the hellfire. It's not because you desire the Jannah, but because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you despise anything but Allah. So you don't look at anything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Ghazali says, and this zuhud is zuhd al-arifin. So the zuhud of people of insight and knowledge. It's a different type of zuhud, actually, different than the first and the second level. Because here his or her main focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not the dunya. It's not the hellfire. It's not the Jannah. It's how to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything he does or he plans is all about, is it pleasing Allah? Is it not pleasing Allah? Everything he says, is it pleasing Allah? Is it not pleasing Allah? And so on. So his main focus or her main focus is about Allah Azza wa Jal. So he's not bothered by the dunya. The dunya is just, you take whatever makes you survive, and you want to spend the rest of your time with Allah Azza wa Jal. And probably we mentioned the hadith a couple of times before. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّهُ لَيُغَانُ عَلَى قَلْبِي. My heart become cloudy sometimes. وَأَنِّي لَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ فِي الْيَوْمِ 100 مرة. And I do seek Allah's forgiveness per day 100 times. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the scholars commented on this hadith, and they said this cloud or these clouds on the heart is because he's dealing with the dunya, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, dealing with these issues in the community, this house chores with his wives, with his companions, with dunya issues and so on. And he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, considered this as clouds because his main focus is Allah Azza wa Jal. So he does istighfar for that. And as you can see, it's a very high level. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then Ghazali even go further to divide Zuhd into a different division. Or he's rereading the previous levels in a different way. So he says the perfect level is to focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave anything else. And then lower than that, you practice zuhud in the dunya, but you are not zahid in the akhirah. you are after the akhirah. It doesn't mean you don't look after the akhirah. You don't ask for the akhirah or work for the akhirah. Lower than that, he says, you have zuhud in wealth, but not in status. So some people are practicing zuhud in wealth. He doesn't like money. He's not involved in any wealth or anything related to this. But when it comes to status, he likes to have status. And this is not a perfect level. Because Ghazali says sometimes status is much more important than the money. Actually, it might bring the money and might bring the rest of the dunya. So this is why he's saying, in order to be considered as a person of zuhud, you need to have zuhud not only in money, but in money and in status. Al-mal wal-jah, as he stated, rahimahullah. Then he wanted to shed some light on what is the difference between a person of zuhud and a poor person. What is the difference between the two? He says, zuhud is you refrain from the dunya voluntarily. So you have decided to refrain from the dunya. Whilst you can acquire the dunya, whilst you can get the dunya, but you decided, I want to practice zuhud. But if the dunya refrain from you, you cannot get the dunya. And you have a desire to get the dunya, but you can't get it. And this is not zuhud, this is poverty. Faqr, he says, and not zuhud. And there's a big difference between the two. Although the outcome, you might see two people look alike, but the difference between them is somebody who refrained from the dunya, he kicked the dunya and focused on the akhirah, and the other one, the dunya kicked him. So he wants the dunya, but the dunya kicked him. So you see both of them, like their appearance look alike probably. Yes, they have the basics, but in their hearts are very different. So someone called Zahid, someone called Faqir. Faqir, he's a poor person. He's in need of the dunya. Yes. And then he's commenting further on the faqir. He says, but having said this, the faqir has a level higher than the rich person, because he's not getting any of the luxury of the dunya, any of the goodness in the dunya. Yes, so this is his test. If he were to pass the test properly and do the right thing and follow the guidance of the Sharia, definitely. So he has a level in the Akhirah higher than the person of wealth. Now we have some discussion among the scholars who's better, the faqir that practices sabr in the dunya, or the wealthy who practices gratitude and shukr. Ongoing debate. Some people says this, some people says that, and every group has their own evidences from Quran and Sunnah and so on. But nevertheless, of course, if somebody was tested by poverty and he is not going outside the boundaries of the Sharia, and he is practicing sabr and he is trying his best to make his life better and his family's life better, but it's not happening. Whatever he tries, his risk is very limited, his income is very limited, and he's trying his best, it's not working. Then he's practicing sabr and ihtisab, like seeking the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without doubt, this person will be rewarded, inshallah ta'ala, for getting through these difficulties in the dunya and practicing patience for that and so on. It's not like somebody who never face any hunger or any difficulty in that regard, and he's living luxury and he's fine and so on. So they are not the same, because that person is tested on a daily basis, the faqir. And you might say, yes, but the wealthy, the ghani, as well is tested on a daily basis. How you earn your money, how you spend your money. But these are two different levels. And because probably this wealth is in your hand, you might be tempted to love the dunya more and to work harder to get more of this wealth, and this will make you a person of dunya, not person of zuhud. And for that person, it's very difficult to leave the dunya. It's very difficult to refrain from the dunya. But for the faqir, he's longing for the akhirah because he's not getting any luxury in the dunya. So he's hoping that in the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him for his sabr. And there are some narrations in the Sunnah that says that the fuqara, the poor people, will get into Jannah before the wealthy people. And Ghazali quoted many other narrations related to this topic, some of which is fine, some of which is not very strong. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects some of his servants from the dunya as you protect your ill person from certain food and drinks, as in the hadith. So yes, this is Allah's protection. So if you did find that some parts in your life you are tested with poverty, so Allah wanted you to go there to experience something and then to protect you and to prepare you to something better, inshallah. And some people even might get wealth and then this will be taken from them if they didn't preserve their wealth in the right way, i.e. to show gratitude, to pay their obligations on that wealth, to look after their obligations towards their families and the poor people around them, and so on and so forth. And then Ghazali talks about contentment. And he says if the faqir was content with what he has been given and he's not so keen to get the dunya, he's not longing and struggling or striving to get the dunya, and he's just running after the dunya. If he's not doing so, he's content with what Allah has given to him, trying his best, of course, to make his life better, then his level of poverty is close to the level of zuhud, if he's content with what he has been given. And Ghazali quoted a hadith in Tirmidhi, good news for the one who's being guided to Islam, and his livelihood was with contentment. So he lives with contentment, with qana'ah, and he has a sufficient provisions. So he's saying, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, good news for somebody who's like that. And then he quoted another hadith as well. There are plenty of hadith regarding the fuqara and the poverty and poor people and so on. So one of these narrations, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the level of the faqir to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's closer to Allah, the faqir. But can be as well, the wealthy person can be close to Allah Azza wa Jal if he were to do his, fulfill his rights and obligations and pay his zakah and look after the needy in his family and so on. He can be even higher than the faqir. Depends how he deals with this wealth. Because we've seen, for instance, Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, he was a very wealthy person, but the dunya wasn't in his heart. He used the dunya to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it wasn't his focus, rahimahullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And then Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala finished this chapter by saying, and you cannot get into these levels without patience. And this is why he will talk about patience in the next chapter, inshallah ta'ala. So let's pause here and open the floor for your questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Jazakumullah khairan. Beautiful session as always. Quite a hard one for us to grasp. There's a question we have on the chat in Arabic. I would attempt to read it, or you can read it. But it's basically asking whether the marhala thalatha هل يريد الآخرة أم أيضا لا تهمه
الدنيا والآخرة.
Yes, no, there you go, you can read it.
The third level, Ghazali is talking about somebody, he's not looking after the akhirah. His focus is Allah Azza wa Jal. Yes? So his main focus is Allah. So like the statement of Rabi' al-Adawiyya, which is well-known statement. Oh Allah, I did not worship you because I fear the hellfire or because I desire Jannah. I did worship you because you deserve to be worshipped. So Ghazali is coming from that angle, if you want. So having said this, because Rabi' al-Adawiyya, she was in the 2nd century. So Ghazali is in the 5th century. So it's a well-known statement. So he's coming from there, if you want. So again, it's a different level. It doesn't mean he neglects the akhirah. No, he knows there's the akhirah, of course. He knows there's Jannah and hellfire, of course. But this is not his concern. His concern is Allah Azza wa Jal. If you have Allah, you have everything. That's it. Which is very high level, but it's good to try.
Do we have any other questions? Sheikh, can a Zahid be happy in dunya because he's always longing for the akhirah, like in the hadith that the dunya is a prison for the believer?
Happiness, it's internal status. It's something in the heart. It reflects on your limbs, on your face, and so on your actions, on your words. So whoever finds Allah, he finds the real happiness. So when you find Allah, you find the real happiness. And you still remember the story of, I believe, Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, when he came to Mecca and he, in the early years of Islam, probably the first year or so. And he was searching for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To cut a long story short, and he met Rasulullah, and he listened to the Quran, and he took his shahada, and then he went to the Kaaba and he started saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah and reciting some Quran. Then Quraysh saw him, and then they did beat him up severely. He was about to die, but he was happy, not because he's been beaten up, but because he did find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even probably he couldn't feel the beats, he couldn't feel what's going on, because he did find Allah Azza wa Jal. And he went to the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam after Abu Bakr interceded for him and saved him from being killed. And he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he said, I will go and do this tomorrow if you want. He said, no, don't do anything. Just go to your tribe and we'll let you know if we need something or something along these lines. So the evidence here, if you want, when you find Allah, you find real happiness.
Okay, that's a beautiful answer. Jazakumullah khairan. Sheikh, is it possible? What sort of parents do Zahid parents make? Do they have children who lack ambition? Or how do they inculcate in their children the desire to work hard without sitting back and relaxing because dunya doesn't matter?
Now we need to understand the concept properly. Zuhd doesn't mean laziness. There's no correlation between zuhd and laziness. Some people mistakenly they connect the two together. So they say, okay, he's a zahid, he's a lazy person just sitting in the corner doing nothing but dhikr and so on. Not really. No, this is not the real thing. No. For instance, Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, who was a person of zuhud. And we see Uthman, he's running his business, he's doing his trips between Mecca and Yemen and Sham and other regions as well and other countries. But his main focus wasn't the dunya. He was dealing with the dunya, but in his heart, he was connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is how we create the balance. We deal with the dunya, as Allah stated in the Quran, وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Seek in everything you have been given the akhirah, and do not forget your portion from the dunya. So you need to create this balance.
So Sheikh, you said that the person who renounces the dunya chases them. So does that mean materially they will do better, or does that mean in contentment, or does that mean there'll be more barakah in their rizq?
Different ways. Sometimes this, sometimes that. But the main thing is, don't make your aim the dunya. So if you are not after the dunya will look after you. If you are after the dunya will kick you. Or in other words, if you want, serve Allah and the dunya will serve you. But you serve the dunya will kick you.
And finally, Sheikh, is a zahid a person? We've got a question here. So the question is, you mentioned sabr helps moving in stages. Does sin change this stage after he achieves it?
You cannot guarantee a station. You can go up and down as anything in life. So you can leave the station and come back to it. You can be in a station of sabr and sometimes you lose sabr. You can be in a station of zuhd and sometimes you lose zuhd, and so on and so forth.
And to end, Sheikh, the question is, if the zahid is the person who's settled for less, does that mean that their then they don't have savings and that they're living on the edge, and so they're living with a higher status of tawakkul?
It can be different levels, as Ghazali divided them. Some people will save for a month or 1 year. Some people will save less, more, etc. Depends on their level of tawakkul, but it's not everyone's cup of cake, cup of tea or piece of cake. Yeah, we have two hands risen.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan for a beautiful session. Is there any reminder you'd like to give us about the days of Dhul Hijjah before we go?
We have two questions. We have Samia and Sanai and Latif.
And Stephen. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh dear. Please, can we have Sunny's question and then Samia's and then Latif's?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. This was really a wonderful presentation. Thank you for this. I've got a question, and forgive me if it's a stupid question, but just for my understanding, this concept, this notion of Zuhd, is Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, the first one who has coined it or has come up with it?
No, at all. Ghazali just mentioned this after so many years. Imam Ahmad in the 2nd century, 3rd century, if you want, he has a book of Zuhd. Imam in the time of Abu Hanifa, the 2nd century Hijri. So since 2nd century onward, we have plenty of books on Zuhd. So you are talking about 300 years after the 2nd century, if you want.
So we can understand Al-Ghazali's work as a reminder, resurrection of let's say, well, yes, reminding words, reminding concepts, because things have been forgotten by people.
Every time we should have somebody who brings this concept again to life and to practice. So Ghazali was one of them, and in his time we have plenty of other people as well who are talking about the same thing. But eloquency and the depth of Imam al-Ghazali is very special.
Okay, thank you so much.
Latif, please, your question.
It was nice, alhamdulillah. I was enjoying. So I want to know more about Imam Ghazali. So do you remember what was the name of his father? Was he a scholar or theologian like that?
No, his father was, if you want, a righteous person. Yeah. He loves knowledge. He attended the scholars' circles. He loves the scholars. So he wanted him and his brother, i.e. Ghazali and his brother, to be among the scholars, because he loves the scholars, he loves knowledge. And he left them some money and then asked his friend to be their guardian after he passed away. And his friend did look after them until their money finished. And he said, I'm poor, I can't look after you financially. So I will take you to the madrasas type thing at that time. So they will eat and sleep and learn for free. And this is how the journey of Ghazali started, rahimahullah ta'ala, himself and his brother. His brother became wa'idh, preacher, and he became a scholar. And Allah did fulfill the desire of the father to make his children scholars.
MashaAllah. So, Ustad, one more question. Did he disappear from the society, from the community for a long time? I read
10
somewhere.
years. 10 years.
What was the reason for that?
Many things, actually. You can read in his biography that competition and envy and tricks, and because he was very well known. And if you are in a position like that, people will envy you, people will start spread rumors about you, start do tricks and plots and stuff like that. Ghazali is not into this business, so he refrained from getting into any of these conflicts. And then he took a time out, 10 years, and then he came back. And during these 10 years, actually, he wrote the best of his work. He wrote Ihya Ulumuddin, he wrote the book which we are reading now, and so on. So, alhamdulillah, it was a good practice.
MashaAllah. I think his biography is very interesting. I want to read it. There are so many things happened that time. There are so many philosophy, and there are some clash between some scholars and something. Inshallah, I will read. Thank you, Ustad, for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Salaam.
Sami had a question, and then we'll take Siddhar's, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh, and everyone. This is a really beautiful session, Sheikh, but I feel a bit frozen after this session and a little bit confused. If you could help me with this confusion. I think, mashallah, over the years, I think you've tried to teach us to keep the balance between the dunya and the akhirah, and this has been one of your key messages about keeping the balance. But I sometimes find, and this is where I'm getting to my question, that we can justify things in our life because it suits us. And my concern is that there is a very fine line between acquiring the blessings of this world and showing them as we've been instructed to do by being grateful and thankful and enjoying the blessings. And then on the other side, it could be an acquisition to try and just satisfy your own whims and desires, because we're over-consuming, we're overindulging, but we justify it by saying, but actually we're blessed and this is one of the blessings Allah has given us. So could you please, if not now, but at some point, help us to understand how we can differentiate between the two? Because there's a fine line. And my own worry is that we're falling into error unknowingly because we're justifying it. Does my question make sense, Sheikh?
Yeah, I'll give you the clear example. Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, before and after he's been Khalifa, he was a wealthy person. He was indulged in luxury and what have you, but he was within the limits and the boundaries of the Sharia. When he became a Khalifa, he sold all stuff and wealth, and he just went to basics because he said, okay, now I'm responsible for everyone in the Ummah. Allah will ask me about them. So he started with himself, and he started with his family. He just stripped them from all the positions and wealth and what have you, which they acquired through their positions. And he felt the burden of the responsibility towards Allah Azza wa Jal. And he was just satisfied and content with the basics. And we still talk about Umar bin Abdul Aziz, although he just ruled for 2 years plus a couple of months, rahimahullah. And so he did set the example, if you want. And before that, we see Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Again, he has the wealth of the dunya under his grip, but he was just wearing the basic clothing and so on and so forth, because there's a higher obligation you need to fulfill rather than just looking after yourself. Yes. So definitely we need to get the balance, but depends where you are. Some people in that journey are still in the beginning. Some people are in the middle. Some people just got towards the end. I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about the journey. You might be very young and you got into the highest level. It's not, age is not into consideration here. So yes, we need to get the balance right. So the core of it, if you want, do not make the dunya your main concern. This is the core of it. Don't chase the dunya. Don't. Live the dunya, yes, but don't chase the dunya. Deal with the dunya, yes, but don't make the dunya your focus. Don't allow the dunya to control your heart, your decision, your plans. Don't. Make the akhirah, make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate aim. And this is how you get the balance. Otherwise, it's just very confusing. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yes. So Sheikh, that what you've just mentioned here, I apologize, I'm re-questioning, but this is really important. So that balance that we're acquiring, you're saying that we don't chase the dunya. Sometimes you find that the dunya has come to you. You haven't asked for it, subhanAllah, but Allah has provided you with so many blessings and so many things that we need to be grateful for, but you've never asked for them. They've just come to your life. So in this essence,
that's good. That's not bad. If we were to deal with it within the boundaries, otherwise it might come to you and be your test.
Yes, and it could lead you out of the folds of being grateful. Yeah. So then that's the test, and then making sure that you always, recognize that that's the blessing from Allah, and not to be excessive, not to be extravagant, all of those things. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Thank you very much.
Jazakumullah khair. Sidra, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. So a lot of questions. So the same as what the sister just said now, I have become quite frozen, and especially as parents, having children, we just think and want so much for them, and then, but at the same time, making them humble and grateful, and having gratitude in their character seems quite hard, with the way everything is, and then with zuhud, then how would you, yes, heading away from worldly desires, but then at the same time, how would you balance it with the ilm of the dunya? Because I have young children and they're growing, and to do well at school, and then want the best for them, only so they can, when we look when we sort of have this invisible foresight in the future of what our child should be doing 20 years from now, having a stable job, earning, having income, but then at the same time, because I know some families, some parents who are working extra hours, and they're working extra hours to provide the best sheikh, for example, for their child, for them to have the best tajweed, or to, for them to, and then the best tutoring as well for them to be the best in their class, and they're working tirelessly like this. So then, I am a bit confused and frozen how to raise the children with the idea of zuhud as well. Would you have any advice on that?
Yes. Again, it's the same advice which I mentioned earlier. You can do all what you've mentioned already, like looking after your children, their education, their tajweed, their deen, etc. But again, you've mentioned that working extra hours, it shouldn't be on the expense of the family. He's working extra hours, but he's, with my respect, neglecting his family, although he's looking after them from something else, but they need him to be with them. Yes. So again, we need to be balanced here, because you just went extra mile, which you might not need it. Yes. If you were to ask the children, what do you need now? Probably education is important, but they need their father. They need the compassion of their father, the love of their father. It might be their mother as well, working tirelessly and hard and what have you. So we need to create the balance. So dunya should not be our target. We live in the dunya. We are definitely inspired to do the best in everything we do. In the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah love from his servant when he does something to do it with excellence. Do it with excellence, yes. Doesn't mean that you just do it halfway or some of it. Do it with excellence. That's important. But again, it should not be our main target, the dunya. Dunya is a path to the akhirah. So yes, we prepare our children to have, inshallah, good jobs, to have good things in life. But again, we prepare them to be connected to Allah Azza wa Jal, to see the dunya in the right lenses, not in a different lens, to see the dunya as a path to the akhirah. It's not the final destination, and so on. So we deal with the dunya, we excel in the dunya, nothing wrong with that, but again with the right intention. So the intention is the key. If you have the right intention, then yes, you might be, as we stated earlier, you might be like Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, very wealthy, very advanced in his business and his trade and what have you. But dunya is in his hand, it's not in his heart. It doesn't change his connection with Allah Azza wa Jal. He gives the money for Allah's sake, plenty. So yes, if you can get to this balance, then that's absolutely fine. But don't allow the dunya to control you. That we are trapped, actually. And we are trapped in the education system. We are trapped in the media and the news and if you want, everything around us forces us to shape our understanding. So we need to take a step back. I'm not saying that everyone should be a zahid. Of course, it's not everyone cup of tea. Of course not. But minimum, we need to make the dunya not our target. Make the dunya as a bridge to the akhirah. Excel, yes, but excel for the akhirah. You get a good job, what is it for? For status? Not for status. You get a good job because you can influence more people. You can get into more people. You can get a good salary. You can spend on yourself, on the needy around you. You can do a lot of good things with the money which you are getting. Okay, but we need to get the balance right. We need to get the heart and the intention right. If we sort the intention and the heart, then the rest will follow. So Zuhd is all about the heart. Don't be overwhelmed by the appearance. Although Ghazali touched upon the appearance a bit, but the core of Zuhd is not the appearance. It's the heart and the intention. So when we get the heart and the intention right, then the rest will follow, inshallah ta'ala. You don't need to be frozen. Inshallah, you can activate your iman in the right set, in the right environment, with the right intention, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Very nice words of wisdom and encouragement. Jazakallah so much for all of this, because as parents, I think, especially mothers, because I think we're quite more sensitive and we worry a lot. I worry a lot, and I do get anxious, and sometimes I do lose sleep about, if something has happened or, with growing children. But I think intention, what you said, that's a really meaningful reminder that, just make intention and leave, the rest for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guidance and just make dua. So, yeah.
Inshallah.
Okay, so Jazakallah khairan to everyone for their questions.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Here I am remembering the word of Imam Ali radiallahu anhu. Ali radiallahu anhu. He said, aim to live in this world without allowing the world to live inside of you. Because when a boat sits on water, it sails perfectly. but when water enters inside the boat, it sinks. I'm remembering this beautiful word.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the session. Sheikh, did you want to say anything about Dhul Hijjah, or do you think it's time for dua?
We have started Dhul Hijjah. Today is the beginning of Dhul Hijjah, alhamdulillah. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the most beloved actions to Allah are in these days. So let's increase our goodness in these days. In Siyam, whoever can fast, then Siyam is Sunnah. These 9 days of Siyam. The 9th is Arafah Day, which is equivalent to 2 years for forgiveness. So it will be on Friday, and I've been asked, are we allowed to fast Friday alone, or we have prohibition that we cannot fast Friday alone? You can, for those who cannot fast a day before. Of course, you can't fast a day after because it will be Eid, and you can't fast on Eid, it's haram. So for those who can't fast the day before, they can fast only Arafah, that's absolutely fine. So we can start with a good tawbah, sincere tawbah, inshallah ta'ala. Siyam, qiyam, if you can do qiyam, it will be as well very rewarding. Charity as well, and a lot of dhikr, and invest in the time which you have been given these 10 days, inshallah ta'ala, the best days in the year. We have the last 10 nights in Ramadan, the best 10 nights in the year. These are the best 10 days in the year. So let's, inshallah ta'ala, increase our, inshallah, goodness from ourselves, inshallah ta'ala. I'll finish with the dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وسامحنا وعافنا واعف عنا شر انفسنا وخلقك سلمنا هيئ لنا من امرنا رشدا ومخرجا برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. Ya Allah, make the dunya in our hands and do not make it in our hearts. Ya Allah, enable us to follow the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Give us the pure intention, purify our hearts from the love of the dunya, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Connect our hearts with you, Ya Allah. Make our main concern your pleasure, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Bless our parents and forgive them, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and our teachers and our offsprings and our spouses and our loved ones, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. صلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.